Recruit training, more commonly known as basic training and colloquially called boot camp, is the initial indoctrination and instruction given to new military personnel, enlisted and officer. After completion of basic training, new recruits undergo advanced individual training, where they learn the skills needed for their military jobs. Officer trainees undergo more detailed programs that may either precede or follow the common recruit training in an officer training academy or in special classes at a civilian university. During recruit training, drill instructors do everything possible to push a recruit to his or her physical and mental limits. Preface: recruit training varies by nation according to the national requirement and can be voluntary or mandatory. Approximately 100 nations, including the United Kingdom and United States, have a volunteer military service. In voluntary service, an individual chooses to join and thereby agrees to be subjected to the process of building an organization where each life depends on the person next to them. This voluntary status has changed the culture of military service. Recruit training is oriented to the particular service. Army and Marine recruits are nearly always trained in basic marksmanship with individually assigned weapons, field maintenance of weapons, physical fitness training, first aid, and basic survival techniques. Navy and Coast Guard training usually focuses on water survival training, physical fitness, basic seamanship, and such skills as shipboard firefighting, basic engineering, and signals. Air Force training usually includes physical fitness training, military and classroom instructions, and field training in basic marksmanship and first aid. In all training, standard uniforms are issued and recruits typically have their hair cut or shaved in order to meet grooming standards and homogenize their appearances. Recruits are generally given a service number. Recruit training must merge divergent trainees, often from different levels of culture and society, into a useful team. A national basic training will include provision for the basic needs of the recruit: food, shelter, clothing, and these will meet certain unit standards and unit requirements, such as mobility, for an infantry unit. A recruit therefore will be issued basic provisions or equipment according to the requirements of the unit and taught responsible management of these provisions. Recruit training has changed over the years as tactics of war have changed. Infantry units no longer attack in mass formations. However, to move units around a base, formations are useful and practical. A combat soldier on the ground who may call in artillery or airstrikes must be more intelligent and thoughtful than ever before. Recruits are typically instructed in drill to stand, march, and respond to orders. Historically, drills are derived from 18th-century military tactics wherein soldiers in a fire line performed precise and coordinated movements to load and fire muskets. Although these particular tactics are now mostly obsolete, drilling trains the recruit to act unhesitatingly in the face of real combat situations. Modern militaries have learned that a service member often must make critical decisions on behalf of his team and nation. Drill also enables the modern infantry soldier to maintain proper position relative to his peers and thereby maintain the shape of his or her formation while moving over uneven terrain or in the dark of night. Drill serves a role in leadership training. Combat situations include not only commands to engage and put one's life in danger, but also commands to disengage when military necessity so demands. Drill is essential for military function because without the ideally instantaneous response to command that drill conditions, a military unit would likely disintegrate under the stress of combat and degenerate into a mere armed mob. According to Finnish Army regulations, the close order drill serves four functions, is essential for the esprit de corps and cohesion for battlefield conditions, gets the recruits used to instinctive obedience and following the orders, enables large units to be marched and moved in an orderly manner, creates the basis for action in the battlefield. Some aspects of basic training are psychological. Instructors reason that recruits who cannot reliably follow orders and instructions in routine matters will likely be unreliable in a combat situation wherein they may experience a strong urge to disobey orders or flee and thereby jeopardize themselves, their comrades, and the mission. Volunteers in a combat unit will experience a unique level of agreement among participants, termed unit cohesion, that cannot be equaled in any other human organization because each team member's life may depend on the actions of the recruit to their right or left. Special forces and commando units fully develop this unit cohesion. The process of transforming civilians into military personnel has been described by military historian Gwyn Dyer as a form of conditioning that encourages inductees to partially submerge their individuality for the good of their unit. Dyer argues that this conditioning is essential for military function because combat requires people to endure stress and perform actions that are simply absent in normal life. Military units are therefore incomparable to civilian organizations because each participant is in mortal danger and often depends on the others. Australia. Most of the recruit training in the Australian Army is currently held at Army Recruit Training Centre at Kapooka, near Wagga Wagga in New South Wales. Recruit training lasts 80 days for members of the Australian Regular Army and 35 days for members of the Australian Army Reserve. In basic training, recruits are taught drill, weapons and workplace safety, basic equipment maintenance, marksmanship, fieldcraft, radio use and offensive operations. Regional Force Surveillance Units. Training for recruits in the Regional Force Surveillance Units usually differs greatly from training in the rest of the Army. For instance, NORFORCE recruits attend a 2-week course at the Kangaroo Flats. Recruits from areas covered by the RFSUs often come from indigenous cultures radically different from that of the general Australian population, and as such many regular standards and methods of training are not as applicable in their case. Royal Military College Duntroon. Recruit training for officers in the Australian Army takes place at Royal Military College, Duntroon. The ICT is conducted for approximately 7 weeks, after which staff cadets continue military instruction in skills such as weapons training, military history, leadership, strategic studies and other such skills at section, platoon and company levels. Trainees at RMC hold the rank of staff cadet and, if successful in completing the course, are commissioned as lieutenants. The overall full-time officer training course at RMC is 18 months long. Canada. Centralized recruit training in the Canadian Army did not exist until 1940, and until the creation of basic training centers across Canada, recruit training had been done by individual units or depots. The Canadian Army, Royal Canadian Navy, and Royal Canadian Air Force were unified into one service, the Canadian Forces, in 1968. The Canadian Forces Training System, a unified system for all the services, was devised and remains in place today. Most non-commissioned CF recruits in the regular force participate in the 13-week basic military qualification at Canadian Forces Leadership and Recruits School at Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec. Regular force officers completed their 15-week basic military officer qualification at CFLRS as well, before moving on to second language training or their occupational training. After basic training, personnel are trained in the specialty of their environment. Members of the Royal Canadian Navy undergo a 5-week Sea Environment training course, with members of the Canadian Army undergo a 20-day soldier qualification course, while officers go through a 12-week Common Army phase, while members from the Royal Canadian Air Force move on directly to their trade training. Reservists, particularly the Army Reserve, may conduct basic and trades training part-time, generally alternating weekends with their own units. Due to increased integration of the regular and reserve force, many reservists attend courses hosted by the regular force. Members of the Army Reserves complete an 8-week BMQ square combined course during the summer. The Naval and Air Reserve jointly conducts BMQ for its recruits at the Naval Reserve Training Division Borden, Ontario, equivalent to regular force BMQ at Canadian Forces Base Borden. The Navy trains its personnel in seamanship, firefighting, damage control and other skills after BMQ. In the Naval Environmental Training Program in either Esquimalt, British Columbia or Halifax, Nova Scotia. The Royal Military College of Canada is the military academy of the Canadian Forces, and is a degree-granting university. The Royal Military College St. John is a Canadian military academy located on the site of Fort St. John, Denmark. The Danish Army conducts the HBU at 8 bases around the country. The course lasts 4 months, and has its focus on training skills used in connection with the Danish total defense, and on recruiting for the Army's international missions, and for the NCO schools. The recruits are technically conscripts, but during recession years, many young men and women have volunteered for HBU. Finland. Training lasts 5 months total. All Finnish conscripts undergo 2 months of basic training, which is essentially the same for all servicemen. It includes assault rifle marksman training, few other basic weapon training, battle training, short field medic training and camping skills. At the end of this training, all men are promoted to their first military rank. After this, specialized training is given depending on the person. The NCO trainees go to Orc and become corporals or sergeants, from which some are selected to ROOC and become second lieutenants. The officer and NCO training always lasts a total of 5 months. France. In French Army, the Formation Générale Initiale is a 12 weeks course which occurs in a Centre de Formation Initiale des Militaires du Rang. There are 10 CFIM in the country. Prior to this course, new recruits are joining the regiment they are going to serve during 3 to 5 years for Reception Week, where they get gears, filling administrative documents, and last medical exam before starting training equals greater than in France. Any enlisted soldier signs not only for a MOS but also a unit to serve. After completing the 12-week FGI course, recruits are receiving the AFFIM certificate, and are considered as private second class. After 1 week of leave, they go back to their regiment for the Formation de Spécialité Initiale equals greater than MOS training. After FGI plus PSI, they can start training with their platoon for external deployment. Usually, private first-class rank is earned after 6 to 12 months of time in service. For some units, there is also during first year a formation de-adaptation for basic mountain training or parachute school. Content of FGI is the following: 1. Drills, first aid and chemical warfare, PT and obstacle course, first weapon qualification, signals, basic field and infantry training, presentation of French Army, soldiers' duties and reports. Germany. The Allgemeine Grundausbildung of the Bundeswehr covers the first 3 months of military service. The contents of the Allgemeine Grundausbildung includes formal training, weapon drill and basic combat training for all soldiers, theoretical courses about democracy and legal regulations, sports, the basic fitness test and the German sports badge, guard duty training, first aid. A notable peculiarity of German basic training is rooted in German military tradition that prefers actionability to obedience, rather than breaking the personality of new recruits through intimidation and aggression. German basic training generally tries to mold a recruit's personality in the hope of producing soldiers with stronger personalities and more own initiative. Greece. While until 2000 the Greek army was mainly conscript-based, since then a large professional enlisted institution has been adopted, which combined with the reduction of conscript service will produce an approximate 1-to-1 ratio between conscript and professional enlisted. While initially training of the two institutions was shared, it has since then diverged, and conscript training has been reduced in length. Professional enlisted, signing 7-year contracts, are called once per year. They go through a 14-week initial training, which is broken into a 6-week basic training period which ends with the oathing ceremony, and an 8-week combat course. After that period they proceed to specialty training which can last from 4 to 42 weeks. Conscripted enlisted, serving a 9-month obligation, are called 6 times per year. They report to various recruit camps spread over the country. The first week is the reception week, followed by a 3-week basic soldier training course, which ends with the oathing ceremony. Depending on their awarded specialty, the conscript recruits are then transferred to specialty training camps or to operational units. In the operational units the recruits go through a 3-week, advanced, recruit training course, followed occasionally by a 2 to 6 week specialty training course, conducted by the unit. India. The Indian military services have established numerous and distinguished academies and staff colleges from across India for the purpose of training professional soldiers in new generation military sciences, warfare command and strategy, and associated technologies. Israel. The recruit training of the Israel Defense Forces varies depending on the unit. Virtually every unique unit completes a different training course. Recruits are certified as riflemen after the completion of the training, while most non-combat units train in all army bases for the certification of rifleman O2. Individuals who want to become officers must apply to be trained at a facility in the Negev Desert called Bihardwan, Pakistan. The Pakistan Military Academy is a military academy of the Pakistan Army. It is located at Kakal in Abbottabad in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The academy has 3 training battalions and 12 companies. A cadet is trained and passed out as an officer of the Pakistan Army in 2 years. Enlisted men undertake training at the regimental center of their chosen regiment. Singapore. National service in Singapore is compulsory for all able-bodied male citizens and second-generation permanent residents who have reached the age of 18. Conscripts enlisted into the Singapore Armed Forces are required to attend basic military training at the beginning of their NS. They are known as full-time national servicemen. Based on their physical, employment status grade determined by a pre-enlistment medical examination, NSFs may undergo either a standard, enhanced, modified, or obese BMT at the Basic Military Training Center on the offshore island of Pulau Tekong or at the various military units that directly accept mono-intake PES-A and B recruits. Throughout their BMT, NSFs will acquire the basic skills required of a SAF soldier by executive basic drills, physical training, passing the individual physical proficiency test, operating and firing a 21 Saudi Riyals assault rifle, throwing both practice and live SFG-87 hand grenades, complete a standard obstacle course and battle and inoculation course, going through a field camp. At the end of BMT, NSFs will typically complete a 24-kilometer-long route march in full battle order and attend a passing out parade. After BMT, NSFs will receive their posting orders to their respective vocations, which are determined by their PES status, suitability for deployment, and manpower requirements. Some of them will be directly posted to a military unit, while others may undergo vocational training at certain institutes before being posted to units. NSFs who have performed well during BMT may progress to either the Specialist Cadet School or Officer Cadet School for further leadership training. To become specialists or officers, NSFs will serve the remaining part of their NS in their respective units until their operationally ready date. whereupon they will be known as operationally ready national servicemen. Men may still be required to attend reservist training or in-camp training for 10 annual cycles. Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, officer training is carried out at the General Sir John Kotelawala Defence University and at the respective military academies of each respective service. Recruit training for enlisted personnel of the Sri Lanka Army is organised by the Army Training School and carried out at its premises and at several other locations. Following basic training, specialised training would be carried out at regimental training centres. Basic training for new recruits of the Sri Lanka Navy, which is approximately 6 months, are conducted at Advanced Naval Training Centre. This basic training will be followed by on-the-job training on board fleet units and at shore establishments. Combat Training School at SLNS Pandukabaya conducts combat training for naval patrolmen. Basic training for airmen of the Sri Lanka Air Force is handled by the training wing of the SLAFD Yatalawa. This is followed by secularized training at Advanced and Specialized Trade Training School.